We begin in Peru. While most tourists visit the world-famous Machu Picchu, in the capital city of Lima, there are much older archaeological sites that predate the Incas by thousands of years, some even going back to the time of the early Egyptians. However, many of these sites have already disappeared since they're under constant threat as the city of 10 million residents continues to expand. America's Now contributing correspondent Hena Cuevas explores the ongoing clash between the past and the present and their battle to coexist.
Gloria Quispe has lived in her house for almost 30 years. But when she bought her small plot, she said she didn't know she'd be living on top of one of Peru's most ancient civilizations.
Vinimos acá y sin darnos cuenta que había un traficante de terrenos.
We came here and without knowing there was a land trafficker. Perhaps he knew what it was all about, but since we needed land, we paid him and they gave us a plot. This is going to be your space.
The land she bought sits on Garagay, one of the oldest pre-Inca holy sites in the country. Since 1985, almost 4,000 poor families have moved here, claiming the land as their own. And since it's considered an illegal invasion, they have no water, no electricity, and no sewer system. Despite repeated efforts by the government to get them to leave, they refuse.
Nobody was willing to lose the money we had invested.
Land invasions are a common occurrence in Peru. Most are by poor people moving to the city looking for a better life. It's estimated about 500,000 live on top of these adobe temples known as huacas, many built long before the Incas ruled the land. One archaeologist who's been actively involved in trying to save the Peruvian huacas is Guillermo Koch. Since 1997, he served as an unofficial mediator between the squatters, the government, and the ruins of Garagay.
Our efforts are directed to keep them preserving the site, helping them to look for legal solutions and to avoid this alternative that have been taken in most of the cases, that is destroying the archaeological site.
One example is the destruction of one of the most important Inca cemeteries ever found, Puruchuco. Located east of the city, the mummified remains found here include the first known victim of a gunshot in the Americas. The squatters who arrived in 1989 also refused to leave. According to Koch, the filtration from their improvised wells is seeping into the ground, destroying everything underneath. He says it would be impossible to give them the public services they need while also preserving the cemetery.
The problem with the squatters is that they establish themselves in very difficult areas, where at the end, if you have to provide with water, with sewer, with electricity, is 10 times more expensive than doing it in areas that are suitable for human occupation.
In Peru, squatters can often obtain a deed to the land they've invaded if they've lived on it for several years. However, that's not the case if it's directly on top of an archaeological site.
How likely is it that these people will get a deed to the land?
It's pretty difficult. Perhaps 50% of them will get it.
And what happens to the other 50%?
They will have to be relocated.
It's a matter of not only one place, one archaeological site or one community, but I would say several dozens.
Rafael Varón is the Vice Minister of Cultural Heritage of Peru. He says more than half of the existing huacas in Lima are gone, with only about 350 left.
We think that there are ways to protect the sites as they are today and to keep improving the situation. I think we have to, on the one hand, defend what is left of heritage sites, but also we have an obligation to put those sites into social use.
So far, the best solution for the peaceful coexistence between the past and the present may not be the ideal one for archaeologists who are looking to preserve it all. And that is, incorporate what's left of the huacas into the areas they're in. This one, in one of Lima's wealthiest neighborhoods, is not only a full-fledged tourist site, but also a focal point for community activities.
And that's what the residents of Garagay want, to turn their huaca into a place to attract visitors. They've even drafted plans on a proposed residential complex. According to Quispe, it's the residents who have preserved the site. She says it was neglected and that the government has done very little to maintain it or keep it secure.
We've practically become the owners of the archaeological zone. We take care of it. This would not look like this. There have been many more attempts at land invasions.
3 times a week, the residents take turns cleaning the grounds. And they've designated a guard who alerts the community of any suspicious activity, such as illegal dumping. And even though they feel no religious connection to the site, they take care of it in the hopes that they will be allowed to stay.
We have shown that we have protected and taken care of the archaeological zone. We deserve to at least have the land we're living on.
The paradox is that no matter that they have been here for 27 years, the damage to the site is minimum. They haven't really damaged the site. And in fact, they have helped to preserve it. Without them, this site would have been gone at least 20 years ago. Wonderful temple.
However, Cox says the pressure from urbanization and neglect is taking its toll on the huaca. The rare painted friezes or murals, which can be seen in the only excavated section of the site, are nearly gone.
As an archaeologist, what are your thoughts when you look at something that is just destroyed and it just continues to be and eventually disappear?
It's a big tragedy. Most of us, we look to the other side and we don't want to think about, because these were the most important friezes that Peru had. These were the oldest friezes that we had, with at least 2,700 years of age. These were a unique piece in Peruvian archaeology, and today they are gone.
What the residents of Garagay want to do is something similar to the most successful sacred site in the city, the Huaca Pugliana. The 1,500-year-old temple is also located in a wealthy neighborhood. Last year, the Huaca Pugliana brought some 70,000 visitors. The site was saved because back in the 40s and 50s, when the neighborhood was built, it proved too big to demolish, so it was incorporated into the community.
It was a ruin. Now it's becoming a monument. It's becoming a symbol of the neighborhood, a symbol in Miraflores. It has a use. There is a restaurant, tourist camps, visitors camps.
For Koch, this arrangement presents an acceptable compromise, even though a large portion of the ruins have disappeared. But that's not the case in Garagay, which remains untouched and presents the ideal conditions for a research and tourist site.
It's easier because Garagay is more complete. It's practically intact. There is 95% of the site intact, that can be investigated, can be worked with, while here we have at most 15%.
But before any of that can happen, the squatters must get off the ruins. The government wants to relocate them to an area on the perimeter.
We are offering housing that is in better conditions than the housing they have at present, and I think that's our best tool. In addition to the fact that we are not going to take them away from their community.
But for a resident like Quispe, the idea of uprooting after all these years is not an option.
Si el gobierno nos ofreciera un terreno con una casa,
if the government were here to offer us a plot of land with a house, I don't think I would accept. It's been 27 years. It's part of my life here, more than a quarter century, so I would not be willing to move.
And that's a sentiment shared by most of those who've settled on these historic sites. According to Baron, the government is now taking a more active role in tackling this decades-old problem.
At present, we use all the tools that the law gives for protection of cultural heritage, and we do not allow people to settle in archaeological sites.
The people will protect what benefits them. We have to find a way to develop the archaeological areas in fashion that the neighbors, the people will see that are not a plus.
Perhaps in the case of Peru, tourism might be the key to preserving its rich cultural heritage, while also allowing residents to live in harmony with the past that's ever present in their lives.
Our thanks to Hena Cuevas for that report.